Welcome again to Mission Alive. Recently we were talking about snakes, not a very pleasant subject, but what happened that the question came up, how many snakes have you ever found in your house? And I thought, well, of all the years I was in Papua New Guinea, we didn't really find a lot of snakes in the house. When I was at Yule Island, of course, there were many of those dreadful Papuan black snakes, so deadly. But in the house, they never came. They were out in the bush, they were on the paths. We had to be careful where we walked. But twice, I think, once, two, maybe three times in Milne Bay, we had an experience of snakes in the house. The first one I remember was we had a beautiful cat. The cat's name was Francis. Francis never came into the house. Francis always came up the back steps, sat in the vegetable room beside his plate and waited till that plate was filled with vegetables. I never knew a cat who only ate vegetables for his food, but that was all Francis wanted. But then one night, Francis slowly stood up and went into our big room. One end was the dining room, the other end was our workplace room, where we did our school lessons, where we had readings, where we played cards, where we had entertainment. And Francis slowly walked up the length of this big, long room, prowling, really like a tiger going up, stretching out his legs until he got to the end cupboard where the door was open. When he got there, he sat down, and then his tail started to swap from side to side, so slowly, so carefully. We all became very still because we knew with this tail wagging, with this tail switching from side to side, something was wrong. And Francis wouldn't move. We called his name, we put his plate of food down. Francis didn't move. He stayed in front of that cupboard, staring at the cupboard and switching his tail backwards and forwards. So after a while, we became a bit braver and we went and we looked underneath this, and yes, there in the back of the cupboard, there was a big snake, a horrible looking snake, a frightening snake. So we sent over to Father's house for Brother. Could Brother please come over and help us? We were in trouble. Brother always came to help us. He was a wonderful man. So Brother came over, as he came up the stairs. He came up the stairs and onto the veranda, and we told him what was happening. So very carefully Brother knelt down beside Francis and looked inside. There, sure enough, was this huge snake. So Brother went off, got whatever he needed. I forget what it was, a stick or a knife, a grass knife or a bush knife. He got something and he came back and he sat beside Francis. Francis never moved except for that tail switching backwards and forwards. And finally, Brother put this big, long bush knife, grass cutting knife, into the cupboard and got the snake out. We all went backwards a long distance. Brother stayed there, Francis stayed there, but stood up now, stood up, stiff and prowling, growling inside his chest, but not moving, not running away. This snake wasn't going to frighten him. And Brother and Francis, between the two of them, they killed that snake. It was a taipan, a very dangerous snake. If it had been there all night while we were sleeping, we mightn't have woken up in the morning. But the snake was killed and Francis was hailed as a great hero. Then that was the first time in the house. We don't know how it got into the house or where it even came from because we hadn't seen a taipan before in the Trobes. Once I saw one in Milne Bay, but not in the Trobes. So that was the first time I'd seen a snake in the house. And it made us very careful of leaving cupboard doors open. Any cupboard doors were now kept firmly closed. We didn't want snakes in the cupboards. We didn't want snakes in the house, and we certainly didn't want them in the cupboards where they could hide. If they were in the house, You could see them some places, but not in cupboards right on the lower shelf and right at the back in the dark. So we have to be careful when you live in countries where there's dangerous animals, and snakes are dangerous animals. So be careful. Be careful where you go, what you do, and what's around, because things are dangerous in life and in whatever we're doing. Have a good week, and God bless you.